Hey guys, it's Mike from Wicked Woods. So this is one of our walnut piles. These are kind of our smaller walnuts up here, so a lot of them just get turned into dimensional lumber. The next one on the list is an English walnut. It has a hole in it, so we're gonna have to check that out when we get it up on the mill. So we got the English walnut landed on the mill, had to flip and trim a little bit, but here it is. English walnut is not a variety of walnut that we typically source out to try to get a lot of. This one was a local log, so we were able to just take the skid steer and go get it and bring it back here. The English walnut is generally hit or miss. So if we mill a branch like this with English walnut, generally your heartwood is just right down the center. What happens, we usually edge these boards off so hard that there's really just barely any heartwood left in them. And this one is just shy of 12 feet. So this one makes them pretty long slabs. With English walnut, they don't move too much when they're drying. Pretty typical for walnuts. They do have some movement, but not like sycamore and cherry and things like that. So we will do this in the 3-inch slabs. I noticed when the sun decided to come out, we have a hole in here, not just a hole. What looks like a 2x4, looks like it got healed around, but you can see there's nail holes in there. So it looks like somebody put a 2x4 in there and somehow nailed it in for like a toe board or something. So we're gonna try to get that out because there's some big 16-penny nails. And okay, I have no clue what that was. We got some taper on both sides, so I have no clue, but we got two 16-penny nails that went through there. I don't see anything else in there that's really going to be man put in. I think it's just rot at this point. So yeah, we'll get a couple of these 2x4 pieces cleared out of here and we'll get the mill running. So when we're constantly rolling our logs around the log yard, they do get stuck in mud. You know, when they hit deep with limbs, they always punch through our barrier. So when they get saturated in mud, they just pick up all of these rocks and just little gravel. We're going to head and pressure wash it off. Okay, so we get a nice bark conclusion over here. So this may have had another branch at one point. Yeah, it looks like termite coop. See, these all might be termite holes. But it did sound like we hit something, so we'll get this next slab lift and we'll see what's inside of it. eBay didn't strike it down. You communicate your plans about as well as I do. So we generally like to keep our bark on in the log yard, and what that really allows us to do is kind of have a little more time before we need to mill them. They'll still dry, but it really does keep a lot of the UVs, keeps a lot of the sun just caking and baking and everything. But when we get to the mill, we try to get it removed. A lot of times you'll see what looks like dirt, and it's just years of mud and things decomposing, and it kind of just turns back into dirt as far as the blade's concerned, because it all does dull it. We're milling everything into 3-inch thick slabs. Everything is 12/4 today. Since this was already milled on the other side and we flipped it, we have a flat reference on the bottom. So generally I can go up and get an idea of where we're going to start. So if we're going up by 3s, it looks like 18 is going to be our first cut, and that'll, allow us to get 6 slabs. So if the top cap is at 18 inches, we can get 6 below that. So we'll get it at 18 and see how that looks. Okay, we'll get these two taken off and put on the forks. And we'll see what our blade is cutting like. So we're not cutting perfectly flat, but we're not cutting bad. The main issue with the blade right now is whatever we nicked or hit that made it unhappy is just not clearing the sawdust. And when it gets a bunch of sawdust on the blade and it gets hot, it starts really building up and makes it really hard to cut. So let's see how this next one is. Okay, let's get some water on this, see what it looks like. Termites. So the funny thing is they don't have a tough exoskeleton. So when you see them come out, you can just literally smear them. The main problem with pressure washing these holes is you don't know if this hole connects to this one at this angle. We've done a lot of pressure washing on these logs where we'll kind of, hit the holes and then termites come out and get stuck. Ooh, that one squished a little bit. And termites come out and get stuck on your beard or whatever else. So these, it really doesn't matter. It's next to my house, next to structure, blah, blah. But when these hit the daylight or any kind of UV, they really don't have the protection for that. So they dry out pretty quick. There's a big one right there. So these dry out pretty quick if you don't squish them. But sometimes squishing them is satisfying. So we'll pressure wash some of the other ones out and then we'll keep milling. just all those knots, the blade wasn't quite sharp enough to do it. So we heard a couple of tinks and a couple different cuts when we were milling, and usually that means we found some metal. I don't think we did. I think we caught a couple of rocks, and the blade's still cutting flat, but then right when it hits knots, it does a wavy game. It's kind of hard to see, but if you get down here to get the perspective, I mean, you can see just how wavy that got. But we are cutting 12/4 or 3" thick, so we can flatten these to still have value. But beautiful heartwood. This will darken. You know, down here you have a lot more, you know, epoxy potential. And these may have been nails at some point. I can't tell whether it's bug damage that got darkened, but this looks like another branch got cut down here and the tree healed over, so you kind of got figure around there. But yeah, we'll get these loaded up. Sometimes when we're milling through slabs, we'll cut 3 or 4, whatever our mill allows us to, then we'll take them all off. But with termites, we really like wash every one of them. You know, you can say, well, this has termite damage, you might not use it. You know, maybe we'll cut off the end, maybe we'll cut it off to here. But the thing about the termites is, if you are going to use the wood, which we will, it is much easier to pressure wash it out when it's all wet than it is to get dental picks and everything else when it's dried. A lot of the times, we've heard multiple stories. It's happened to us a couple of times. We had it happen to us with black ants. They were kiln dried, they were dead, but when we poured epoxy, they floated up out of the holes. And I get it, we have air compressors in the shop, we can get as much as we can, but generally it's a lot easier to get all this grit out with a pressure washer before we dry it. So we're all wrapped up with the English walnut, and we ended up with basically 6 nice slabs that are all 12/4 3 inches. And then we ended up with like 4 kind of caps that'd be good for live edge or whatever the case. So we'll get these stickered stacked, and appreciate you guys watching. Give me a like and subscribe. I think I've earned it. Thanks, guys.